Are you trying to decide which city in the Virginia Beach area you want to move to? Well, today we're going to talk about the reasons why you might want to avoid each city. We'll cover a lot of different types of subjects, things as a local in the area, what I would suggest, and keep in mind, and if you're on the fence, these might be some of the reasons why you might want to shift towards another city in Hampton Roads instead. The first is avoid Chesapeake if you want variety. Well, how do I say that? Well, Chesapeake was ranked as the most boring city in all of the United States, which is not a good sign if you're looking for lots of things to do. Chesapeake has lots of country, lots of suburbs. It's a place where people love to grow. School districts are in high demand, but there's just not a whole lot of stuff to do. And the stuff that's there, it's just kind of the same thing over and over again. You've got a lot of suburban neighborhoods, plenty of nice ones, but it's like the same type of house over and over again. Brick, 2-story, maybe vinyl side 2-story or ranch. A lot of those over and over again. Or grocery stores. Some nice grocery stores. You've got Harris Teeter, several places. Kroger, I like those. And you're also pretty accessible to other parts of town, but you get them over and over again. So if you do pick South Chesapeake, you'll probably feel a lot of redundancy. Same goes with West Chesapeake. A lot of the same things in West Chesapeake. And also in Central Chesapeake or North Chesapeake, which it's the same thing over and over again, but it's kind of an older version of what you might find in other parts of Chesapeake. So there is variety, I guess you could say, in between South Chesapeake, Central Chesapeake, and West Chesapeake. The problem is that within the variety of those three places, there just isn't that much difference. It's not that much to be drastically attracted to Chesapeake for the unique variety of what you'll find in the city. You'll find some mom and pops as you go further into South Chesapeake, but all in all, not a whole lot of variety, whether it be in shopping, things to do, houses themselves. Even the roads can look very similar in different parts of town just because they're kind of old. And that's fine, but it just feels the same in a lot of different places. The next is avoid Hampton if you plan to work on the south side of Hampton Roads. That includes places like Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake, and Portsmouth. And the reason is because of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. I'm going to show you the problem that we face on a daily basis is going across this tunnel. It is extremely busy and it can back up at any point of the day. For a variety of reasons I've mentioned before, one of the big ones is that the tunnel is not very high, so you have trucks that drive through. They're often taller than the tunnel itself. So there are employees that have to actually stop some trucks and have them turn all the way around and go all the way through 45-minute detours to avoid driving through the tunnel. And in doing that, it backs up the people behind them. And there's already bad enough traffic as it is. And then you have a stop just because of a turnaround truck and you have more backups. So that's one issue. The other is just general rush hour. And then also Hampton construction. So if you look at Hampton, there are a lot of construction sites all through the south part of Hampton specifically. And what's happening there is it's causing a lot of backups on the interstate, going on the exits, going onto 64. And so that is an added dynamic there. Now, the benefit here is that if you do wait this out in the next 5+ years, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel will be renovated and expanded, and a lot of these issues will be completely taken out or reduced quite a bit. And so because of that, I could see Hampton appreciating in value over the long term. But if you're planning to move here in the next few years, it could be very frustrating if you do live in Hampton and plan to work in places like Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, and anywhere around the south side of Hampton Roads. The next is avoid Suffolk if you love hosting parties. Okay, this is interesting because people like to find places that have lots of land, and they also want more bang for their buck with houses. And I understand that, and that's me. I love just looking for that type of thing. And people often are attracted to what Suffolk can offer. It's a big land size. I'll show you on the map. The actual Suffolk city is huge. Well, you see here, look at this. It's the biggest land size city in all of Virginia. Well, look at this land size. You see how large this is. We also see where the houses and the locations are most populated, the north, east, and also kind of the central parts. Well, if you look at wherever everything else is, if you're coming here because you love Virginia Beach, for example, it's going to take you 45+ minutes to get from Suffolk over to Virginia Beach. And same with Norfolk and Chesapeake, 30+ easily. But if you're thinking, hey, I can get a bigger house in Suffolk, people can come to hang out with me and I can spend time with them and I can get a bigger house. I will tell you from personal experience that from people I know that have moved to Suffolk from Virginia Beach, and also me wanting to spend time with people I know that are in Suffolk and beyond, It is frustrating. It feels like such a far off, distant place that even though it might be 35 minutes, and 35 minutes on the interstate, this isn't even that bad. But if you're thinking about driving the distance and how far away it actually is, it feels like a hike. It feels like so far. People that move to Suffolk with the idea of wanting to have a bigger house and bring people over and host people, you'll find that the people that you might have known and spent time with in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake, they might not want to spend time with you in Suffolk. And it's nothing against you. It's just, it's so far. And the house, that greatness of the house might not be worth it for them to justify driving. And so what you might often find is that the people you spend time with, you'll find more of them in the areas of Suffolk and maybe like Carrollton and Smithfield, because those are areas that are closer to each other. And so you might find new tribes, new friends in those areas based on where you live, because it is just so far to drive to the rest of town. And on top of that, if you do plan to, you live in Suffolk and now just go to the beach, regularly, you might find it's a lot more frustrating to get there than you may have realized, and you might find yourself not as much of a beach person once you get to Suffolk because of how far it is to get to other beaches. Now, there are some pivot points, like you can go to Ocean View in Norfolk, for example. You can go to even other parts of Virginia Beach to go to the beach, or Hampton to Buckrow Beach. That's fine, but even then it still takes a while, and so there's no easy access to a large, massive beaches, so you just might change how you live on a day-to-day basis based on the fact that you want to live in Suffolk. And make sure you enjoy that house that you buy, because it might be a better house for the money, but it might change your lifestyle drastically. The next is avoid Williamsburg if you want nightlife. I do know that people like the idea of Williamsburg a lot because it's very relaxed. There are lots of really nice houses in and around Williamsburg, not just Williamsburg City, but James City County, York County, on the north and south sides of Williamsburg near Jamestown. There's lots of nice neighborhoods in and around that area. The problem is that once you live there, okay, not a whole lot to do. Even to me, more extreme than Chesapeake. I mean, you got Busch Gardens, and there are other smaller things in and around Williamsburg, and in museums in colonial Williamsburg and historic Jamestown and Yorktown. Those are all things to do, but they're more like destination things as opposed to on a day-to-day basis, what can you do? A lot of things in restaurants and events in the evenings end earlier. So you might find yourself going to places that close at 9 or 10 as opposed to 11, 12, and on. Very hard to find those restaurants that stay open a lot longer. So a lot of the lights turn off earlier in Williamsburg compared to other cities in Hampton Roads. So keep that in mind. If you do plan to live in Williamsburg, make sure you do appreciate the earlier evenings. The next is avoid Portsmouth if you do want to pay low real estate taxes. Portsmouth is a city that has the highest real estate taxes in the whole Hampton Roads area, $1.30 per every $100 of real estate value. And one of the reasons is because there's an extremely high ratio of non-taxable real estate in Portsmouth relative to taxable real estate in Portsmouth. A lot of churches, nonprofits that have property in Portsmouth, and so the city can't get revenue in real estate taxes from those places. So in Portsmouth, you'll find that the real estate taxes are a bit bumped up, partly to offset the lack of ability to get more revenue from more places. And so if you do plan to move here, you might see prices in Portsmouth lower than other parts of Hampton Roads. Like you might see a house that might be $425 and like in Norfolk might be $360, $350 in Portsmouth. The problem is that while it's still possibly cheaper, you might be paying more per month in taxes to offset some of the lower prices you might be paying in Portsmouth. Now, granted, if you're living in New York, for example, and you're coming to a place like Portsmouth and you're trying to save on real estate tax, relatively speaking, it's not so drastic. But if you do want to save as much as possible, Portsmouth is the one you're going to be spending the most in real estate taxes. Avoid Portsmouth if you do not want to pay the highest real estate taxes in Hampton Roads. The next is avoid Virginia Beach if you want a deal on a house. Okay, so Virginia Beach is one of the highest price cities in all of Hampton Roads at $461,000 median sales price. It is up there, and it's the highest in the South Side. And the reason I say this in Virginia Beach is because Virginia Beach has a specific name value and brand, and Virginia Beach has the highest median sales price in all of the South Side at $461,000. And so there's a specific type of branding that Virginia Beach has. Number one, there's some demand for schools that is almost unmatched in other parts of Hampton Roads. And then you've got the access to the beach that is also kind of unmatched too. So you have some variables here that add to the demand. And so when you see a house that just has the Virginia Beach city on it, the demand for that word, those two words, beefs up the cost for a house in Virginia Beach compared to that same house maybe in Chesapeake or Norfolk. Now, Chesapeake is also a pretty high price as well relative to other parts of Hampton Roads, but Virginia Beach is the highest. And I've found that if you're looking for a deal, it is the hardest to find that deal. And sometimes people, because they look for a deal so much, they often pay more for the deal than they should have than what it's actually worth because it feels like it's a deal. Like, so for example, if you get a foreclosure in Virginia Beach, there are some Virginia Beach foreclosures that it might be worth $350, but they might be paying $375 just because it feels like a deal in Virginia Beach. But they forget that the math doesn't work. So keep in mind that if you're buying in Virginia Beach, just make sure that it's the house that you want. And that's because you think it's a good deal, because just again, check the numbers. It might not be a under appraisal a deal, but on the flip side, if you do buy a house in Virginia Beach, and you feel like you're paying more than you should, the good news is that when you go to sell it, more than likely you'll also be selling it for more than you might have thought you could as well. So you kind of have to think differently in terms of Virginia Beach as far as finding the right property. Don't look at it from the standpoint of finding a deal as far as undervalue, but look at it from the standpoint of you're probably paying more now, but you're also going to be getting more later and insulating your investment. The next is avoid Newport News if you want a lot of new construction options. Okay, Newport News has some good things going for it, especially on the western side of the city, along near the water, off Jefferson Avenue. But the problem is that if you want a newer house, it is very hard to find a whole neighborhood full of new houses. There is one called Huntington Point that still is building. That's one. But the problem is that I've not seen any others in the city right now in 2024. There are some new construction in Newport News interspersed amongst a bunch of different neighborhoods, like individual houses built in those pre-existing neighborhoods, especially in the south part of Newport News, where you've got vacant lots, where you got older house, brand new house, old house, old, vacant lot, new house, old. That kind of pattern all through the south part of Newport News. So a lot of the new construction you'll find in Newport News, if you do a search, you'll see that a lot of them are that type of situation. So you'll see a picture of the house, the new house on the MLS or on Redfin or wherever. You'll see that picture, but it doesn't show you the rest of the neighborhood because it's just one house in an older pre-existing neighborhood. So you don't really get a full glimpse of what's actually there. And it's not the same thing as like a new construction community. But if you want new construction, I shift to places like Suffolk and Chesapeake. You'll find a lot more options, especially in Suffolk if you want that bang for buck. Again, the drawback again is that if you do want to live on the peninsula, it's still going to be kind of a drive, and so it's not the ideal. So finding new construction in a whole big community is almost non-existent in Newport News. The next is avoid Norfolk if you are concerned about flood insurance or flooding in general. Now, the reason is not necessarily because all of Norfolk is in a spot that you're going to have an issue with flooding. It's not like that. And it's not like that with any part of the Hampton Roads area. But Norfolk does have a very high ratio of areas that require flood insurance to areas that don't. Now, this can change a lot based on FEMA's flood maps as they change them periodically as time goes by. However, you'll see that on the FEMA flood maps, and I definitely research this, look up the flood maps so you can see where the highest risk areas are. But you will see that a majority of the areas that you might find that you like the most have the highest propensity to also require flood insurance as well. So now, in that being said, the flooding here doesn't necessarily mean flooding your house. And I've said this a lot before. It could mean flooding the streets. It could mean affecting the roadways to where it's hard to park, and having parking areas off the road, off the street can really help and make it more attractive to be in Norfolk. However, as time goes by, if there are more concerns about flooding as the years go by, the areas that seem to have the most appeal in Norfolk, also some of them have the highest chance of having more issues going forward. And also, the nuances here are very specific. So if you do plan to move to Norfolk, if you talk to people here locally that have a good understanding of the city of Norfolk, you might be able to get some better real specifics on areas and not just have to trust the maps themselves. But if you're coming here and don't have any context at all, and you can't do that research, or you don't feel comfortable doing that research, I would just not focus on Norfolk as much if you are concerned at all about the flood insurance dynamic. If you're able to do some research before you move to the area on areas of Norfolk that don't have the issues that you're worried about, I think you'll probably be fine. So if you have any other questions about living and relocating in Virginia Beach through Williamsburg and Hampton Roads, let me know. It's what I do. I love helping people relocate to the area. So if you have any questions, I have my contact information in the description. You can call me, email me, text me at any point, and I will do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you on the next video.